It's going to fix itself here in just a second. One second.
Share it on my acupuncture page.
You sure can.
Yeah. I will go to Tanisha.
There we go. I'm going to make you a co-host. Then if you have yourself set up so that you can share, you should be able to share. So there are some people already in the room with us. We're getting started a little early. Hey, Facebook. Hi, Mama Brenda. Hi, Mama Rachel.
Hello.
We're still getting started. Ooh, I'm going to remember to hit the record button because I am all over it today. It only took like 8 of these for me to get a rhythm.
Tanisha, are you sharing this on Tanisha?
Everyone's place. Nope.
Okay.
I run everything through my business page. All right. So there we go. Tanisha, are you sharing let me cut that off because we don't need that rebound. All right. So we're going to give it a minute. Folks is always late, and we're actually starting early today. That's not usually how that works. When Mama Renata Allison Britell Reed to me gets herself set up. And again, if you have the capacity for share, I've made you a co-host, so you should totally be able to do that.
Let's see, share. I'm going to try to share it.
There you go. Hey, Facebook. Y'all hold on for us one second. You know that your girl is not technologically sound. I have gotten significantly better. I'm recording on time. I've started on time. I got our guest in on time. I am like winning today. It's the small things. So while I thought I admitted her. All right. So while everything is going on in the background, I'll give you a little rundown and introduction of me. Hi, I'm your friendly neighborhood pen lady. I am Dr. Tanisha Dandridge, and welcome to Acu-Points, Black Acupuncture Meet and Greet, where the show got started because we simply wanted to be able to highlight the fact that there are Black acupuncturists, however few of us there are, and we are not unicorns, we are real people, right? And this is the last in a 4-part series. I was doing some fundraising for Dr. Mutulu Shakur, who is a political prisoner and has been held in prison for over 30 years. He should have gotten out several years ago, and at the very least have been released on compassionate release because his health is failing and he has an advanced stage of cancer. So with that being said, I feel like we're as good to go as we're gonna get. How are you doing over there, Mama Renata?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Dr. Dandridge.
Thank you for coming and talking to us about herbs. One of my favorite subjects, right? There's a lot of, I swear I keep cutting off my phone and yet it keeps making noise.
I have mine off, pretty sure.
All right. Second time cutting off the phone. All right. Thank you for joining us and being willing to come on and talk to us about traditional Chinese herbal medicine, which is really different from the naturopathic approach of medicine. And most folks don't realize that. So, and naturopathic medicine, or I call it everyday Dre or everyday Dre medicine, people are accustomed to this kind of cherry picking an herb or here and there, and not knowing that there's a lot of elegance that goes into traditional Chinese medicine. So without further ado, I'd like to say thank you for coming, and would you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
I would love to. Thank you for being here, everyone. My name is Allison Reed Britell. That is my legal name. A lot of people call me Renata, so you might hear Dr. Dandridge refer to me as Renata or Allison. Both of them are correct. Most of my patients, however, know me as Allison, and that's how people have found me over the course of my career. I am a licensed acupuncturist. I work in Encinitas, California, and I've been an acupuncturist for about 24 years. Yeah, so those of you who have been in this series with Dr. Dandridge might have already heard some of the other acupuncturists. May have referred to Pacific College. It's one of the bigger colleges in acupuncture and Asian medicine. And that's where I went. I have a master's in traditional Oriental medicine, now being changed to traditional Asian medicine because of the word not necessarily representing what it should. So,
When did you graduate?
when?
Yeah, how long ago did you graduate? I know you've been a for 20 years.
1996.
Nice. I can't
Yeah.
wait till I've been doing anything for 20 years. I'm so happy to say 11.
Yeah. It was pretty cool to hit that 20-year mark, I have to say.
I bet. So
Yeah.
what brought you to acupuncture? Why acupuncture? What did you do before?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. So I essentially was in a completely different field when I started. I had a fine arts degree. I was actually a jewelry designer for about 15 years. And I think I was getting a little bit bored. I wanted to learn some new things, but I was also starting to look into healing modalities of all kinds and into nutrition. And what I ended up doing at one point, I was actually taking a course from Barbara Brennan, who does energetic healing. But then somebody suggested that I go and hear this man talk about mind-body medicine. And that man was Deepak Chopra. And he was giving a lecture at the Pacific Symposium, which is an international symposium for acupuncturists. It happens every year. So it was a huge symposium that he was speaking at, talking about, at the time, mind-body medicine. And at that time, it was very new. People were starting to think about the connection between your thoughts and the way your body functions. And Dr. Chopra was very much on the forefront about talking about how to utilize the way we think and feel about our health to improve the healing process. I'm going to close my door. I may need to put my earbuds in, but if there's a lot of noise, let me know.
You're doing great.
Yeah. So because he was, he was starting to write a lot of books, and I was reading about it. But he's not an acupuncturist. He's actually an endocrinologist, or at least he was. But he was talking about medicine and healing from a more holistic perspective. And he was talking to a group of acupuncturists. So I started to meet some acupuncturists and became interested in studying Asian medicine. And so that was sort of the beginning of it all.
Yeah. So we have a lot of conversation going around in the acupuncture community about our treatment, particularly as melanated humans during school. How was your school process 20 plus years ago?
I have to say that my school process was great. I really enjoyed being a student. I was really comfortable working in a completely different way of thinking. When you approach Asian medicine, a lot of times from a Western perspective, people kind of enter it and try to break it into components or compartmentalize it somehow. Asian medicine is very poetic and very, there's a lot of lore and there's mythology, but there's also, there's an artistic finesse to it. It's not necessarily 1 + 1 = 2. It's much more nuanced than that. And so for me, that was a natural fit. It seems that I already think that way. As a person of color, I would have appreciated having seen more people of color. There weren't any teachers other than Asian and European teachers. But in my school at the time, there might have been maybe 2 other Black students, maybe at another time, 2, 3, or 4 at different times. So a pretty small percentage. But it wasn't problematic for me. I just would have liked to have known more experienced acupuncturists who were people of color. That would have been cool. So.
Awesome. I'm muting myself because this crazy neighbor that likes to pull donuts over by my house, and it's alarming.
Not now.
Okay. So you graduated and you got a chance to start practicing. Tell us a little bit about your early practice and why you love herbs so much.
Yes, I actually started my herbal pharmacy before I graduated. I started doing massage while I was in school, and I wanted to start my pharmacy right away. I just wanted to get to business as soon as possible. And as an herbalist, you could do that. You know, there's no license per se for practicing herbology, although there probably should be. You know, you really want to rely on an herbalist who has years of training, not someone who went to a workshop over the weekend, or not someone who, you know, is doing research on the internet by themselves. You know, I mean, that may be valuable, but it's very, very limited. So I actually wanted to start my pharmacy right away. And I have a story to tell you about that. Yeah.
I like stories. Tell me stories.
Yeah. So one of my teachers at the time, Jae Min Fan, who was newly arrived to the States, he was one of my first teachers in herbology. And I don't remember exactly what year of school it was, but at one point he gave a lecture to the Pacific Symposium, that same international symposium that I referred to. And it was on using the bufo toxin from a toad to treat cancer. And we all just sort of went, what? Really? And not only did he talk about how to use the toxin, he told us how to find this toad in the woods, how to identify the toad, how to extract the toxin from the glands, and then make medicine to treat cancer. And we all just sort of literally, you know, jaws dropped to the floor. And we said, really? Are you actually saying this? And he was completely serious, because in China, they were in fact doing that. I don't know anyone in the United States who has actually done that. Maybe there are some out there. I am not one of them, but I know that this is actual medicine. And so after he had given his lecture, which was fascinating and highly researched, and you know, it was no joke. But after he gave the lecture, we were kind of kidding him, because it was such a bizarre thing that, you know, he would make this medicine, or even expect all these professionals to go out into the woods and find a toad and make Chinese medicine to treat cancer. So we were kind of making fun of him, and I bought him this giant concrete toad, like a garden toad, put it on his desk. I mean, it was like this big, you know. I put it on his desk. And, you know, we all had a good laugh and ha, ha, ha. But then I had a dream. And it was the toad came to me in a dream. And I somehow understood that I was going to really go farther with my herbology. And I created a pharmacy, and the pharmacy is called Happy Toad Chinese Herbal Pharmacy. And for a long time, I made herbal formulas from scratch, from raw, crude Chinese herbs for my patients and for other acupuncturists in the San Diego, North County area. And that was a great way to start my career, because I could dive in right away. I handled a lot of herbs, and then people started to rely on me for creating formulas for their patients. Yeah.
I think that's one of the best acupuncture stories I've ever heard. I can say that finding toads in the woods was definitely not included in my herbal
Yeah.
education.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's just, it's interesting. There's a lot of things about Chinese medicine that we simply don't do here in the United States.
That is
It's
true.
so vast, and we get a tiny portion of understanding for it because our education isn't really suited to, decades of learning, and decades of training in the field. It's just our educational system is not set up that way. And we have to contend with the American Medical Association, the American Cancer Society, and the pharmaceutical companies. For instance, cancer is the domain of on the oncology department and the Cancer Society. So we can't even say that we can treat cancer. We can say that we can treat patients with cancer. And we can certainly do that with acupuncture and herbs. But we certainly can't claim that we are treating cancer. So even that was controversial.
In most things in traditional Chinese medicine, we're not allowed to say that we're treating things, but that we can help to manage various conditions, including COVID right now. There's a lot of research coming out on the usefulness of Chinese herbs to help with the symptomology of COVID, to help prevent infections and boost the immune system of COVID. And then most recently, it's not an herb topic, but most recently there was a study released done by Harvard, right? Now that it's been done by Harvard, we can all pay attention. A study released on the use of e-stem to help prevent and manage the cytokine storm, which creates so many of these with COVID-19 and the cytokine storm. So, it always takes Western medicine saying that this thing is okay.
That it's okay.
You're allowed to voice anything about it.
We weren't able to do it before, but now you can.
Now you can, right?
Yes.
Now we can talk about it. So speaking of COVID-19, as it is definitely a hot topic right now, what do you have to say about herbs and COVID-19? There's been lots and lots of town halls in the acupuncture community discussing the various types of herbal formulas that individuals can take to prevent the transmission and boost up the immune system, as well as treating the symptoms once they onset, and then recovery, right? And people are like, what herb should I take? And I'm like, it's not that simple. It's never that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could talk specifically about that, or talk a little bit more specifically about using herbs individually versus using formulas. And then I would be happy to share about some herbs that are great.
I don't want you giving out any formulas, by the way. Like, I don't want people going out and trying to themselves with herbs. I have a particular pet peeve about that. Not that there aren't rich traditions in culturally intact societies where grandmother has been passing down herbal knowledge for a while. Those societies are a little bit different than your standard American society, where again, you're just kind of cherry picking stuff. So take
Yeah. Well, what Tanisha is referring to in terms of how we administer herbs, it is very nuanced, and it's very unique to other herbology practices, because Chinese medicine, specifically herbology, has been developed over literally thousands of years. And not only has it been very well developed, it's very well documented, so that, when we talk about, for instance, clinical trials here in the United States, where they take a drug and test it on people for a couple of years, Chinese medicine has been clinically trialed for thousands of years. And the fact that they were really, really good at documenting, okay, this formula can be used in this way for this number of treatments or this number of symptoms. What we can find is, when a practitioner is treating a patient, they are not going to choose an individual herb to treat them. What they're going to do is they're going to develop an entire formula, several herbs working together to treat a pattern of symptoms, not menopause or not scoliosis or not fever even, or cold and flu symptoms. They want to know what the individual symptoms are that are presenting right now. And that those symptoms are basically what we call a pattern. And it's the pattern that determines how the herbs are going to be administered. So once a pattern is established for that individual person at that moment in time, then the practitioner will put together a formula that has key ingredients that address the root of the problem and the symptoms or the branches of the problem. So the reason for that is, one, it works better. It has less side effects. It treats more than one symptom at a time, and it is customized or tailored to that person's symptoms right at that time. So for instance, in a very simple example of a cold or flu, symptoms that you have day 1 and day 2 are very, very different. We all know they're very, very different from the symptoms that they have day 3, 4, 5, or 2 months out into a cold or flu. So it's important that you're treating the symptoms that are actually present, not the symptoms that were happening last week or the symptoms that might be happening at another time. So Chinese medicine is very specific to that moment in time, and also the individual underlying conditions that that person might already have.
I like the example of the common cold. And for like
Yeah.
those of us who aren't acupuncturists and herbalists, and when she's talking about patterns, when you think about a common cold, if you say, I have a runny nose, okay, well, can you blow it? Is anything coming out of it? What color is it? How long have you had it? Is there headaches that go along with it? Is there any bleeding? Is there any fever? Like all of these things change what herbs are going to go into that formula. And this is why simply saying, well, what herb do I take for my stuffy nose doesn't work for us. And we really can't answer you, and we won't. No real herbalist is actually going to answer that question. We might.
You can say there are several formulas that work with common colds or the symptoms of common colds. There are even several formulas that work with sinus congestion, runny nose symptoms. But which symptoms are you referring to? So yeah, we can customize it exactly. Is it runny? Is it clear? Is it yellow? Is it green? Is it accompanied by a sore throat or a fever? All of those things are really important to determine, are you choosing the right combination, or are you going to make the person feel worse? Absolutely. So once we have determined a pattern in the patient, we want to choose herbs that will treat, like I said, the symptoms that are present, both in terms of the branch, those are the symptoms that are showing right now, but also maybe we also need to treat the root of the problem. Does the person have an immune deficiency? In other words, do they get sick a lot? Do they get a cold, every couple of weeks in the wintertime? Or do they have other underlying conditions that also need to be addressed while you're treating the immediate symptoms? And that takes some finesse. It takes an experienced acupuncturist or an experienced herbalist to determine, can we use these herbs together right now for this particular person, or am I going to create some side effects that might affect them later? So we look at the herbs and how they're going to work together in that body. So then what we do is we put together a formula based on traditional common formulas. There are hundreds and hundreds of formulas that are fantastic. that you could just use that base formula. If you can identify what the pattern is, you can find a formula that matches it. But if you can't find one that matches it perfectly, the other nice thing is that we can finesse the formula. We can modify the formula to, treat a person who also has additional symptoms, or treat a person who's very, very weak, for instance, or treating a person who tends to run very, very hot, and, herbs tend to make them uncomfortable. So the nice thing is that we can now modify traditional common formulas to really accommodate that person's symptoms. So I was going to share with you my notes on when we make a formula. This is something that people generally don't realize about Chinese herbs. A formula is not a random selection of herbs. It's often a lot more herbs than people think of. You might go to the health food store, for instance, to find an immune formula. I think a lot of people are doing that right now. And you might look on the bottle and it might have 4 ingredients, or it might have 24 ingredients. 24 ingredients is not uncommon. A traditional Chinese formula might have anywhere from 9 to 18 ingredients. That is not uncommon. And the reason for that is we're going to use herbs that treat the main symptoms, herbs that treat secondary symptoms, some herbs that are there just to mitigate side effects. And then there are other herbs there that are kind of helper herbs. So they have names. So your formula is always going to have Jun, which is the monarch or the king. And that's the main ingredient. It's the main ingredient or the chief ingredient, and it's always going to address the major symptom. The second ingredient or groups of ingredients are called Chen, and those are called minister ingredients. And they're there. They probably have very similar actions as the chief ingredient, but they might also address secondary symptoms along with the main ingredient. The third group of herbs would be called Zuo, and those are assistants, and they are addressing a secondary pattern. So for instance, if we're addressing a cold or flu, those chief ingredients and the minister ingredients might address the sore throat, but the assistant ingredients might address itchy eyes, headache, even fever, for instance. Okay. And some of those ingredients might mitigate some of the adverse effects of some of the other herbs. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then the last group of herbs, or usually it's a single herb, is called a carrier or a courier. And those are herbs that are there specifically to direct traffic. Where do you want the herbs to go? Do you want to take the herbs to the throat? Do you want to direct the herbs up to the head or the top of the head specifically? In fact, some of the herbs that fit into that category have a very specific function they're called a medicine horse, and they are designed to carry herbs exactly where you want them to go. That's very unique. There is no other medicine that does that. Absolutely not. Okay. So
thank you first of all, for that very succinct, very elegant breakdown of how traditional Chinese herbal medicine works and why this is so different from the other formulas and herbology is approached. This is kind of like things that are huddled together because they all work on a thing. But the way that our formulas are put together, the way that they literally work together to be a cohesive unit to take care of a series of problems. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And actually that last ingredient, the carrier or the courier, sometimes it's called an envoy, is also, not only does it carry things, it also blends everything together. It's like taking everything with a spoonful of honey or a spoonful of sugar. And it's often a sweet ingredient like licorice or even honey baked licorice. So what's unique about that function is it makes the formula more palatable, which is great, but it also makes the formula more digestible, and the unique properties of licorice and some other herbs in that category also reduce the toxicity of other herbs. And I want to stress that herbs can be toxic to you. Of course, you know, anything that we put in our mouth could be toxic to us for various reasons. But it's important to keep in mind that herbs are medicine, and it takes knowledge to use them appropriately to not, you know, create or to have the harsh effects from taking too much or by taking it in the wrong way. So when you create a formula, one of the benefits is you're creating a safer way to take herbs.
Thank you again for bringing that up. I try to tell people that just because it's natural medicine doesn't mean it can't hurt you. It is medicine. And just because it's not aspirin or Lipitor or something that you go and you get from a pharmacy doesn't negate the fact that this thing is still a medicine, and you should make sure that this is something that is appropriate for you.
That's right.
Stuffy noses are not equal, and not only are all stuffy noses not equal, if you're having an issue with hypertension, or if you have a liver problem or a kidney problem or a sugar problem or whatever your constitutional basis is, your herbalist will take that into account before they.
Exactly.
So herbs are not playthings just because they're herbs.
Exactly. Exactly. So what would you like to hear about now? So we talked about, looks like Mallory had her hand.
Come on, mama, get on here.
Hi. I just wanted to clarify that I was getting the components of a formula correctly. And so you mentioned June as the monarch, Qin as the minister, Zhuo as the assistant, and then the envoy or the carrier. Were those the four main components, or was there a fifth?
Four. You're correct.
Four? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I talked about the last category also would include the medicine horse, the function of a medicine horse.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I have that in my notes as well.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let me see what else did I
We're
want.
waiting for questions, and I can see you, Facebook. So if you guys have questions, come on and jump on there. So while we're waiting for some more questions to come in, one of my favorite stories about the potential toxicity and abuse of herbs is Mao Huang. And I like to bring up that herb right now, especially in the midst of COVID.
Yeah.
An herb we can't get anymore in the United States, and that's because it was abused. Do you want to tell that story? Because that story makes me mad.
Sure.
Think about it. Go ahead.
You might have other additions to this, but we have been using Ma Huang traditionally. I mean, Ma Huang has been used for years, actually right here in the United States, because it's a part of American, Native American medicine, and also the Amish use, what do you call that? Something tea. I forget what it's called. They have another word for it.
Is it Easiac?
No.
No, that's
Mormon.
First Nation.
What's that?
Isn't it
That's First Nation, never mind.
Mormon tea?
Mormon tea. I'm sorry. It's not the Amish, it's the Mormons. So it grows domestically here in the United States. We should probably just grow it and, manufacture it. But, and of course it's been used in Chinese medicine for forever. But when people realize that it works really, really well for weight loss, they started adding it to weight loss formulas back in the 70s and 80s, or maybe even the 90s. And then people started to overdose on it because they thought, well, if I just take a little bit of it, I can take a lot of it. Well, it's a stimulant, first of all, and it's a cardiac stimulant. And so it will cause a racing heartbeat, and it could also cause you to, have to stroke out, especially if you're using it in combination with ridiculous exercise. And
Yes.
that's what's happening. People were
So-
passing out and stroking out using ephedra
There you go.
in excess. Yes.
So ephedra or malhuang was never meant to be taken by people who were moving around. Like, this was an herb that was supposedly given to people who were very sick, who were having trouble breathing, who needed to be able to oxygenate their blood, who were having things like asthma or COPD or ridiculous coughing to help descend the lungs and to slow down that entire process. So the idea would have been that you'd have been laid up in bed anyway. And the thing was to help you to be able to get rid of the pathogen that was inside of your body. So when people forget that, oh, this makes me sweat, this oxygenates my blood, this increases my heart rate, and yeah, we called it ephedra and we started sticking it in everything. And now all of a sudden we have trouble as herbalists being able to put our hands on this herb in a commercially safe way to be able to distribute to our patients. And that's especially in the time of
We really need it.
we really need it. So they're using it in China, but we're having a hard time, and people have secret stashes that they won't tell you about.
I ran out of my secret stash so long ago. That's gone. Yeah. But ephedra is actually a bronchodilator. And it works beautifully that way for people with asthma and COPD. Exactly. And for people who, even if you don't have asthma and COPD, you have the symptoms of those things when you have a upper respiratory infection. So yeah, it's really unfortunate that we can't access that herb anymore. It's not the only herb, though, that's been removed by the FDA, not by the use of Chinese herbalists, but because Western, American patients were misusing it. So,
Give us another one.
Well, Aristolochia and plants that have a aristolochic acid in it. There's a class of herbs that fit into that category. They have all been removed from the shelves. And they have their own beneficial properties as well. It's just that there's a toxic component to them and people misuse them. So, yeah.
Okay. As no one is bringing up questions, which is
I have a question.
Facebook. Oh, come on, Mama. What you got?
Well, with the mahuang, what about? So I was learning. We have herbs. I'm learning herbs in tandem with acupuncture at my school. So, they were talking about our teachers were talking about using Broncaid. Do you if you had like a patient that was coming in, no sweat, like basic symptoms, your mahuang would be useful, but we don't have access to it. Do you recommend like over-the-counter drugs like Broncaid because it has the ephedra sulfate?
I don't know anything about Broncaid. So it sounds like it's an over-the-counter cold and flu remedy.
It sure is. Yeah, it sure is.
It sounds like it has a synthetic ephedrine. And I suspect it might be useful. I just don't know the pharmacology of that.
Okay, no worries.
Right.
So we have a question about using yellow dock root for blood conditions like anemia in and out of pregnancy, but it is hard on the kidneys if taken regularly as tea. And that's coming from Fundisha. I'm sorry, beautiful. Fundisha Anu.
So the question is, could
I'm
you
not sure
use
it's a question. It looks like a statement.
Is that the question?
Yes, using yellow dock root for blood conditions like anemia.
Okay. I don't know yellow dock as much as I know some other docks like burdock. And I suspect that it has some blood purifying properties. And usually what that means in Chinese medicine is it probably improves the function of the liver and moves the blood. That's how we would categorize that. And so if anything, it may improve the blood purifying properties of the liver. Whether that has blood building properties or not, I don't know. And I guess what I will say is the difference in Western herbology and Chinese herbology, when you're talking about issues of blood, is in Chinese medicine, we break down very specifically what is the action that you're trying to do to improve the quality of the blood. Are you trying to move the blood? Are you trying to break up blood clots? Are you trying to increase blood production? Are you trying to limit blood loss? Those are all very, very different actions. And, you know, having a function that says improves the condition of the blood doesn't tell me anything. I have no idea what you're trying to do there. So if you can say specifically, are you trying to make more blood cells, red blood cells? Or are you trying to make blood more available to different parts of the body, or any of those other actions? That's what I need to know. I need more specific information.
And again, like you said, that is the like one of the biggest differences between like Western herbology and Eastern herbology. And then if we're talking about the quality of making more red blood cells, it isn't just about making more red blood cells, because the next question is, let's get down to the root.
What do you do with it?
Well, like, why are you not making red blood cells in the first place? What part of your physiology is going wrong that you need to be able to make more red blood cells, and that process is being hampered? So we really look at these questions differently. So like one of the ones that I'll get is like, you know, should I take on Dong Guai? And I'm like, I don't know. Why are you trying to take it?
You know, what is the botanical name of yellow dock?
Let me navigate away and find out, because no, that's, you know, I know all my herbs in Chinese. If it's not in Chinese,
right. I know more of the botanical names. And yellow dock is not, I don't think, is even a Chinese. It's in using
Rumix crispix.
Yeah, I don't think we even use that herb in Chinese medicine.
Not a lot. I don't think. Hold on. I am looking it up, because again, I only know my herbs in Chinese. If you do not tell me what that is, I cannot help you. And I can't find a pinyin for it. Looking for it.
Yeah.
Really fast. Nope, I can't find pinyin.
Well, the docks, like burdock, there's another dock I can't think of. And in Western herbology, they're often used as in herbal combinations that address issues of the liver. So, and we know one of the functions of the liver is its blood purifying, filtering property. So I suspect that's where they're going with that.
I found a name for you, and it's not one I'm familiar with. Chin Chow Mai. Chin Chow Mai.
Oh, okay.
And it goes to the liver and it's cold.
Yeah.
So in terms of like blood building, I would be really hesitant about giving somebody a cold herb if I need to blood build, because then I would need to balance it out with something warming, because that person's probably already experiencing some cold conditions. But it just kind of depends on what's happening inside of the body. And again, like, you know, I tell people like Chinese herbs are just different than Western herbs. We don't do a lot of those things. And as far as them having an effect or a negative effect on the kidneys, that is, blood iron absorption for anemia, guess it builds blood. I'm trying to read some of these comments because I navigated away from the page. And so that is one of the difference with Chinese herbs. Like, we build herbs in to protect from toxicity. So if you're talking about, oh, this herb has a negative side effect, and there are definitely herbs that have low grade toxicity or even high grade toxicity. The formula is built around being able to use that herb as a chief or as a minister, and then being able to make sure that the chiefs and the ministers aren't creating damage while they're doing their job.
Exactly.
Hop says, do you grow any of the herbs that you use? If so, which one?
That's a very Good question.
That's a good question. There are herbalists that grow their own herbs because they have the land and the space to do that. For me personally, I grow culinary herbs, and people sleep on culinary herbs, but culinary herbs have a lot of things you can take in fairly large doses without hurting yourself and therefore giving yourself a lot of benefits. So in my garden, they're not Chinese herbs. Well, most of them aren't. I have a variety of mints, spearmint. I have rosemary, lemon verbena. I have lemon balm. I have hot peppers. Yes, hot peppers are an herb. I have I have basil, I have marigolds, I have sage, I have stevia, right? Because like sweet tooth.
Oh,
and
nice,
I grew a
nice.
lot of stevia, particularly before COVID, when I made a lot of tea for my groups. I didn't want to give them sugar all the time because they're already detoxing, and like giving them sugar isn't going to help. But giving them stevia gave them some natural curiosity and the capacity to have a sweet tasting tea without having the sugar. Do you
Right.
have any herbs, Mama Renata?
You know, I'm more like you, Tanisha. I grow a lot of culinary things, a lot of culinary herbs, and I have probably tried over the years growing various Chinese herbs. I actually have some echinacea, which is not a Chinese herb, but it's a pretty common, herb for the immune system, and they're beautiful echinacea flowers. But there's a reason we don't grow a lot of Chinese herbs here in the United States. There's a very specific growing environment that Chinese herbs, well, any herb needs. There are lots of herbs that grow domestically here in the United States that grow beautifully, and they have specific properties to the terroir that they grow in. Do they grow in a marsh? Do they grow in a rocky crag in the mountains? Do they grow under a pine tree? Do they grow, in manure? They're very, very specific conditions. So to duplicate those conditions here, sometimes it's possible and sometimes it's very reasonable to do that, especially with the very delicate leafy things and flowers. But things that are roots, things that require very long growing periods, really have very specific geographic and environmental conditions. So it's difficult to duplicate that. And what that speaks to, though, is we have to be very, very careful about where those herbs are cultivated. Typically, you would want them to be wildcrafted, meaning they grow in their natural environment, which also means they're organic. It doesn't mean they're certified organic. It just means that they've been naturally growing there probably for lifetimes. And they're happy in that environment. They have the maximum potential of nutrients in their correct environment. But we also want to know when any country is cultivating they're cultivating any herbs for market. We want to know that, one, they're grown in, fertile soil that are not contaminated with environmental toxins, metals, and fungi and bacteria and plastics, which are now everywhere, things like that. And we also want to know that they are cultivating the correct herb, that they've identified and cultivated and treated the herb correctly. And so we have to rely on our experts, but also have a relationship with Asian countries that we trust to cultivate these things conscientiously. And unfortunately, China has been notorious for adulterating herbal products, selling products that are not what they say, having environmental and animal and human rights violations, animal poaching, all of that. They're terrible in that regard. But they're also, they're also fostering a medicine that has been preserved over thousands of generations. So we have to take the good with the bad, and we have to be knowledgeable of where our sources are. Where are we getting our herbs from? So rely on an acupuncturist, rely on someone who has already established a connection to excellent sources, reliable sources.
Awesome. Thank you, Mama Renata. All right, I have a question. I'm sorry, Aaliyah, I didn't see it. She says, do you have a memorable client that you treated with herbs? So this is one of the questions that I ask quite a bit. Like, you know, what is one of your favorite client stories or one of your favorite success stories with treating folks with herbs?
It's very interesting.
Or two.
Well, okay, so here's a couple of them. I have one particular client who I was treating her primarily for arthritic knee conditions. And then I think she had a knee replacement, but she still had a lot of arthritic symptoms and a lot of pain. And at one point, she started taking a Chinese herbal formula that has Chuan Qin Lian, which is andrographis, which is actually an antiviral and antibiotic herb. And she was taking it because she had a cold. I gave it to her because she had a cold. And she says, well, you know, I'm going to keep taking it because it made my other symptoms go away. And I thought, that's really weird. And what it really brought to my attention is that particular Chinese herbal combination, in addition to the fact that it was treating an upper respiratory disease that was just a temporary, probably a virus, you know, a cold that she had. The properties of those herbs that are cold in nature, spicy and cold in nature, also treat symptoms of arthritis. And so it helps us have a broader understanding of what herbs do in our bodies. They're not just, yeah, you can choose an herb that's specific to a cold and an herb that's specific to elbow pain and an herb that's specific to menopausal hot flashes. But wouldn't it be great if you knew that one herb can treat 100 things? In fact, that was an adage that, and I'm sure I'm going to get this adage wrong, but one of my teachers shared with us that a good doctor should be able to treat one disease with 100 different products. But a master herbalist should be able to treat 100 diseases with one product, with one formula. So that means if you really know one formula that well, you could treat anything. If you can treat multiple things with the same combination, because you have a vast knowledge of all of the actions working together, then you can treat so many more things than choosing one herb for one thing. Yeah.
Yes, Stephanie, sounds like stomach 36. So the point of 100 diseases. I tell
Right.
clients, you pretty much can't get out of a treatment with me and me not throw in stomach 36.
I always use stomach 36.
I always, it's like, it's like malpractice to me. If you didn't get stomach 36, I have not served you well.
That's right. Yeah.
So are there any more questions from Facebook land or any more questions from our wonderful guests who are here with us today that you guys would like to ask? Feel free to jump in there if you're online with us in Zoom. Unfortunately, I have to read on Facebook land.
What would you recommend, or what advice would you give to acupuncture students that are studying herbs and like how to, it's a lot. So I guess in streamlining or creating systems, what helped you and what would you
what
share
helped
with
me
others?
study them or learn them? Is that what you're?
Yeah.
I would use them.
Okay.
I would cook them. I would taste them. I would share them with anyone who will, take them with you, and just start practicing understanding what those herbs do in your body. Yeah. And I would also handle them a lot. I remember when we were students, we would get packages of herbs for herb identification. And that's great, but you have to have contact with them, touch them, cook them, make them into soup as we would have done traditionally. And make sure that I actually had them pinned up, like down the hallway and then back up the hallway on the walls so I could walk by and touch them and look at them. But I also used them a lot. So, and like I said, I started my pharmacy right away because I knew that I wanted to have a relationship with the herbs. You really need to have a relationship. It's, I can't express that strong enough.
I am definitely more of a needler than I am an herbalist. I rely on patents, and when my patents don't work, I send you off to people like Renata because she likes to play with herbs and I like to play with needles.
Yeah.
When I was in school, I had a roommate named Leo, and Leo always had some random herb concoction cooking on the stove.
Yeah.
Absolutely offer it to us. Like, here, try this. It's like, man, what sweat sock concoction did you make today?
Yeah.
So for those of you who
make formulas, make tinctures, make massage balms and oils, do all of it, because all of those things are going to teach you something. Absolutely.
They will. So on the closeout, if there aren't any more questions from some of the folks here, Mama Rachel, Mama Brenda, Mama Edith, you guys got any questions? Not to take it away from Mallory because she's just on fire.
She's a curious woman.
She's a student. Yeah, she is making sure she lets her learn on as well. She should. One of the things that I like to tell people, particularly in the American community at large, that has a lot of isms behind what is medicine, what is food, what is not medicine, what is not food, is that the Chinese pharmacology, cornucopia of things that are includes a lot of really unusual substances. And one of my favorite ones to share is sudden smile powder. You want to talk?
Oh my God.
Yeah, when I found out about sudden smile powder, it was just like, that means there is nothing on this planet that doesn't have a purpose.
That's right. That confirms it right there.
That confirms it right there. Like, if there is anything that says that God, goddess, universe, whatever you believe in, didn't make no junk, it is definitely.
Are you going to share what's in it or no?
Yeah, I think you should. Because every female in herbs class is going to have it at least once just to see if it works.
I used it, and I have made it from a raw decoction. So
Woo!
you go to a pharmacy and find squirrel poop as a part of that sudden smile formula. I don't remember the other ingredients, frankly.
Pugong Ying.
That
I
one.
think it's Pugong Ying. Pugong Ying.
Okay. Oh,
it's
yeah.
Dandelion fluff.
Dandelion.
Not dandelion fluff. The cattail. It's cattail powder.
Yes, that's right. Cattail. And because I used to have, a lot of menstrual pain when I was that age and that, when I was an acupuncture student. So I did use it. Absolutely. I did graduate away from it quickly because I thought, I'm not cooking that again. Because it really smells. There are some Chinese herbs that are lovely, fragrant, beautiful. And then there are others that are not. And that is one of them.
Oh, Chan Tui. Okay. So just to give, look, she holds it up. Chinese herbal medicine, when I say we use everything, I went into acupuncture school being a diehard vegan. Like, if
forget that.
Yeah, you got to break out of that real fast to be an acupuncturist. I let that go. Yeah. So I went into acupuncture school being a diehard vegan, And when I got into the herbal pharmacy, and it was like there are cicadas and scorpions and turtles and earthworms and flying squirrel poop and bone broth, right? Like
Yeah.
a host of things. There's pearl shells and all pearls and
Yeah. What is that other? Oh, not the armadillo, but the pangolin scales.
pangolin scales, right? And
A
so
lot
like,
of other poached animal products as well.
a lot of poached animal products, but the thing of the matter is that particularly in the world of naturopathic medicine, there's this huge push to really classify things as good or things as bad. And so oftentimes anything that comes from the animal or insect world are often demonized. And in Chinese medicine, Chan Tui or cicadas are really good for a sore throat. If you're a horse, you got a sore throat and you can't talk, cicadas is the bomb. Like I hate to say it, but they're really good at what they do. And they're also really good for venting hot rashes. And you have this ism that, no, I can never touch these things, then you're going to miss out. Right.
Well, I have a philosophy about that. And I think we have evolved in our understanding of, we can appreciate Chinese medicine in ways where we might use herbs that are very, very unique, very rare, difficult to obtain, and may come from a source that, you know, is becoming extinct, including plants, not just animals, but plants. But we have advanced our knowledge to the point where we can say, I don't need to use that because I have 10 other choices, 10 other really good choices. So yes, there are specific properties to tiger bone, but do we need that?
No.
Probably not.
Probably
not. We don't need bear gall.
We don't.
You know, there are other things that work equally well, if not better. So yes, we don't need to do that. But I do have one last little story that I'll share about a toxic substance. I had a patient who had seizures, specifically when she fell asleep. There's a certain epileptic syndrome where you have seizures when you fall asleep. They don't have them while awake. They have them while they're asleep. So I started giving her an herbal formula, and now the name completely escapes me, that has scorpion in it. And it works like a charm. You have to use it very carefully. And I administered it the way that it needed to be administered. And she took it. She was okay to take it. And it greatly reduced her seizures down to the point where she rarely had them.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
We got one more question, and then at 6 o'clock and people will start disappearing on us. Chi Magazine has an advertisement for ant as a Chinese herb. They describe it as the king of Chinese herbal medicine. I've never heard of the use of ant. Do you know anything about ant?
No, I do not.
That's a new one for me too.
I'm pretty sure it is not the king of Chinese medicine, because I know what the king of Chinese medicine is, and it is not ant.
Well, all right.
What is it?
You know, I'm sure people will argue if it's ginseng or if it's reishi mushroom, linger. So which school do you come from? Do you come from the Renshen school or the reishi linger school? Either one. Either of those would be considered the king herb, but not ant. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's some linger that's been soaking in some vodka for over a year now.
Oh yeah.
And a couple of other things, and I'm looking forward to cracking it open.
That's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorite herbs.
One of my favorite favorites. All right. Thank you, Facebook land, for coming to join us. I don't know if there's any further questions because we have reached our wonderful hour, and this has been so much fun. Thank you so much. Are there any more questions from our guests, Mama Rachel, Mama Brenda, Mama Edith, Mama Mallory? I don't see any more coming in on Facebook. Unfortunately, Facebook is not friendly, and sometimes I miss them. So if I missed your question, I'm sorry. You can definitely find Mama Renata Reed or Allison Reed Bartell.
You can find me on Facebook under North Shore Acupuncture Clinic, or my name, Allison Reed Bartell. Yes.
So, and I also want to thank all of you who have purchased tickets over the course of the last month. We have raised just over $1,000. I haven't done the final calculations. It's either like 1,100, 1,200 in that range. And once Eventbrite sends me the final payment, then we'll be able to send that money forward to the friends and family of Matula Shakur, whom again has been a political prisoner for over 30 years and has not been released for compassionate release, or even just to make parole. Like, they were definitely holding on to him for life and limb. And we understand, the politics that is behind all of that. So if I don't see any more questions coming in, thank you for all the people who have shared. Thank you for all the people who have purchased tickets. I'm going to take a break next Sunday because I'm tired. But hopefully when we come back in a week or two, we should have, thank you so much for telling me I get to have a break. Hopefully we'll have a few more elders from the acupuncture community. I'm trying to nail down folks like Dr. Kokai Patterson, who has founded the African Holistic, oh sugar, I'm not doing a good job, who has founded an organization that is about procuring the health, particularly of Black and Brown people who are being inflicted with racial body fatigue and post-traumatic slave syndrome here in the United States. And he was one of the people that were on ground zero back in the 70s, working with the RAP Incorporated, which stands for Rehabilitation Addiction Something Man. Can you see the brain has just like slid to the left? I've only been typing this stuff for the last 2 days and I can't get it all out. Yes, Moxa Africa is another really, really wonderful organization. For those of you who also don't know, there is the Black Acupuncture, there's blackacupuncturist.com, and we have finally filed our articles of incorporation, and we're working on getting our 501c.
Bravo.
Black Acupuncturists, please shuttle them on over to blackacupuncturist.com and tell them to please join up, even if you're a student or if you're only, I say only because they do good work. If you're only an ADS, if you're only an acupuncture detox specialist, please go ahead and sign up, because we have a space for students, we have a space for international folks, we have a space for ADS. All right, thank you again, everyone. Mama Renata, if you can please hold on, and everybody have a wonderful evening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Talk to y'all soon.
Yeah. All right.